fluenteducation.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our Saturday live question and answer class, where we take your questions regarding American accent training, fluent speaking, pronunciation. Feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time, and I'll answer them for you after we talk about our initial topic. So at the beginning of class today, I'd like to talk about fluent speaking, and I want to specifically look at these two phrases. Are you going to watch that? And I haven't watched that yet. There's two reasons I want to talk about these. First of all, there are some fluent linking and reductions that we do in everyday speech for these that are normal, professional, and if we say these word by word, we're going to not sound natural or fluent. And then I also want to talk about watch and watched past tense and how we link those to another consonant sound, because that's a bit of a challenging linking for a lot of people. People have asked me, how do I hear the difference between watch that and watched that? And I want to go through some details there. So welcome everyone. It's nice to see so many of you here this morning. And if you're joining us later on as a replay, you can always leave your questions in a comment, because I do go back through those and answer them for you after the fact as well. So for our first phrase, are you going to watch that? There's a couple of different ways that we will say this. The main stress in this phrase is on watch. So that's going to have a clear vowel. It's going to be longer than the rest. That means all of these words before watch, are you going to watch? Are you going to watch? Can be linked together, and they're almost about the same length as the word watch, which is crazy, right? There's so many words here. How can I say those that quickly? In order to do that, we link them and we reduce some sounds. So rather than are you going to, we tend to say are you or are ya. So we can either do a full you, are you, or are ya. They're about the same speed. People will do both. And then rather than going to, two different ways we would do it. One would be keeping the going and then changing it to going to. Are you going to watch? Or we can also change it to a duh. Are you going to watch or are you going to watch? Are you going to watch? Are you going to watch that? More common, we just change going to gonna. Now, some people don't really like gonna. They think it sounds unprofessional. But really, in a lot of contexts, are you gonna do that? Are you gonna watch that? It's normal, natural, professional speech. If you're concerned about gonna, then go ahead and use going to or going to. Both of those work as well and are also fluent sounding. We don't write this, though. You're gonna always write going to. So gonna is incorrect grammar for writing. It's pretty normal for speaking. And then, are you going to watch that? Are you going to watch that? Nothing special happening here with linking. Just as I say, watch that. I'm kind of going right from my CH sound to my voice TH sound. Watch that. Are you going to watch that? Are you going to watch that? Again, a couple of different options there. You can play around with what feels comfortable for you and listen to native speakers and see what you're hearing. You definitely aren't hearing are you going to, so you might hear are you gonna, are you going to, are you going to, are you going to. So a couple varieties there. And then in our response, I haven't watched that yet. You can hear that again, watched is our stressed word. And when I say watched by itself, because watch ends with the voiceless ch sound, letters ed just say the t sound. So you could think of it as watched. And actually I would probably write it here without this t. That makes it a little clearer. So thinking about that, your sounds are a ch and a t. Watched. I watched. So when I'm saying it by itself, it does have the t sound. But for words that have past tense and they have the t sound, when they're followed by a consonant, they follow the same rules as a T does when it's followed by a consonant. So if I was going to say watched it, then that sounds like watched it. I'm linking, my T turns into a flap, sounds more like a D. I watched it. However, if I'm followed by a TH, I watched that, I have two choices. I can do watched that, That's really clear. You can hear that it's past tense, and people do say that. I haven't watched that yet. But often this T gets a little bit swallowed. It doesn't get pronounced. It ends up sounding more like I haven't watched that yet. Watched that yet. So both in that case, I haven't watched that yet. You can see here it doesn't sound that different than it would sound if I say I haven't watched that yet. Except that both my CH sound and my T sound are a bit muted and unreleased. So I'm going to go right from the CH to a muted T into my TH for that. Watched that. Watched that. Versus I watched that. I can hear my CH is stronger versus I haven't watched that yet. And the CH is similar in both cases. Fortunately, the context, the rest of the grammar of the sentence tells us the past tense. If I need to be extra clear, I can put my T in. I haven't watched that yet. In everyday normal speech, people will not strongly mark that past tense there. I haven't watched that yet. You'll just hear that there's a little bit of a muted breaking sound between watched and that. Watched that. Versus watch that, just a CH and a TH sound right next to each other, much clearer and more distinct. So it's a little bit detailed, a little bit complicated, but I did want to talk about that because for many people, that's a challenging addition, going from that past tense linking. I do have a video about past tense linking, but I'm mostly focused on linking to vowels. So I'll probably make another new video soon focusing on past tense linking to consonants, especially because we have those unreleased T and D sounds when we're linking to consonant sounds. So we can go into more. If you have questions about this, go ahead and ask them in the chat and we can go into more detail on it. I'm also open to your other questions regarding pronunciation, fluency, and American accent. Thank you so much for your super chat. And you can see I have a little bit of a goal today that if we get 10 super chats, we'll do an extra live class tomorrow. I'm trying to incentivize the live classes. I love holding these classes for you, answering your questions. It really helps me know what videos to make for the channel. And your questions help not only you, but others watching as well. So thank you for your comments and questions. We'll take your super chat question first, which is, whether or not we're, if it sounds like wah wah. Yeah, so it does need the R sound. So in American English, in British English, where we're, they might say it more like where we're. But in American English, we do say our R's in the middle and ends of words. They're always going to have that sound. So what we're looking at here is in the word where, it has the air diphthong. And in the word we're, if I'm just saying it by itself, it's going to have the ear diphthong. But it often gets reduced to more of just an sound. So if I'm stressing it, where we're going, you're going to hear the where we're. That's where we're going. But that's only if I'm stressing on we're. In normal speech, the phrase where we're going, the we're is not stressed and it's unimportant. It ends up sounding more just like the word were. So if I'm saying where we're going in fast fluent speech, it's going to sound like where we're going. That's where we're going, where we're. So this one can get reduced to from an ear. The air just stays. That's where we're going. Where are you going? Where? So the air is not as pronounced. Where are you going? Where are you going? But it's still different than the It's not where we're going. Where we're going. If I said where we're going, you can hear it doesn't sound quite right. Great comment, great question. Thank you for supporting the channel and for your super chat. Let me know. You can follow up if I didn't address your question quite fully, but I think that's what you were asking about. Wonderful. Okay. We have a question about voice placement and breathing and how to practice it. So basically, When it comes to placement and voice, I typically recommend trying to have a very supported voice. Placement, generally having a relaxed, the sound of schwa, the sound, and the stressed sound. My tongue is resting on the bottom of my mouth. My jaw is lightly open. It's a sound that we make for filler sounds in English. That's my kind of core central placement for American English. So when I'm saying, just because of the, I'm really just kind of staying with this line of the sound, with my tongue very relaxed and small movements to the other sound. So not a lot of just because of that, not a lot of opening, not a lot of excursion for the tongue, just a relaxed placement. And then in terms of pitch, oftentimes everyone has kind of a natural pitch range. You want to stay kind of in the middle of your natural range with a little rising up for some stress and falling off to show you're finished. So for practicing that, I would recommend checking out some of the free lessons on my website, speechmodification.com, looking at the listings for voice and tone, learning about breathing and support, and then how to apply that in speech as well. That's a great question, and definitely something that you can get some advanced help with in my online courses, and of course in one-to-one training with me if you're interested in that. Okay, great. Please feel free to put in your additional questions. Let's go a little bit more into detail on our past tense plus consonant sounds, since I'm not seeing your questions yet. So we had, our first example was watched that. This is where we have the T sound for the ED. Let's try one for moved some. So in the case of moved, the ED says the D sound, so it sounds like moved some. But you can hear how when I am followed by a consonant sound, that unless I'm stressing moved some rather than move some, really trying to highlight that that D sound, that D also gets swallowed. It's also an unreleased sound. So I moved some boxes. But the difference between move some, I'm gonna move some boxes, move some, is that here in move, my V sound can continue. I'm gonna move some later today, but I already moved some, even though you don't hear moved some, you can hear how that V is short. I can't hold it because here I'm just linking smoothly, move some, the V can be as long as I want. Here, moved some. The V stops because I'm stopping the air with my tongue for the D sound. I'm releasing it into the S of some, moved some. So that's what happens with the past tense verbs that have a D going to a consonant sound. And again, going back to if I moved it, if I'm linking to a vowel, then I can just think about that like moved it, where I say my V and my D, moved it. Both sounds are there. Yeah, exactly. Same as we were talking about with watched that, where I can do the T or I can have an unreleased T and it sounds very muted. Okay, good. We can go into some more detail on that in a moment, but I see there's a few new questions. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome everyone if you're just joining. Put your questions in the chat at any time, or if you're watching this as a replay, you can put questions in the comments. Okay, another super chat. Thank you so much for that. We have a question about the words boasts and tasks, and whether or not the T and K are silent. So there is something called the rule of three. When there's three consonants in a row, in some cases we don't hear that middle consonant. However, I do think it affects our pronunciation. So if I say he boasts about it, you don't hear s, t, s. You don't really hear that t, right? But you do hear two separate s's. Because if I just said it with two s's and no t sound, it would sound like boasts. It would be a continuous s sound. Boasts. I am kind of making that T in that my air is stopping. So I have boasts, and then the air stops for the T, and then I say the next S. So she boasts about it, boasts about it. I'm not doing boasts, boasts. The T is not aspirated, it's not really audible, but there's a stop there, boasts. For these kinds of practices, what I recommend is building it like boasts, boast, boasts. So in that middle one is where you hear the T. In the final one, the T is not there, but there's a break between the two S's. Same thing with tasks, tasks. I am stopping the air for the K, so it's like tasks. There is, I think, a little light unaspirated K there. Tasks, tasks. That one I feel like I hear it more than I do in boasts. Tasks. So same thing will help though. Task, task, tasks. Being able to do that. Sks. You can do it by itself as well. Sks and sts. To hear how I'm not aspirating, but that cluster of the ks and the cluster of the ts is there. If that makes sense. Great question. Thank you so much for asking about that. Because we don't want to hear just tasks. It's not going to sound correct. Tasks. It's got to have that little stop. So you're basically trying to say that K, but it doesn't really get burst out or released specifically. Great question. Thank you so much. And thank you for your contribution and your support of the channel in the super chat. Okay, great. We have a question about tell him and tell him in fluent speaking. I think I've talked about this before. So if I'm thinking about tell him, which basically stands for tell them, and tell him, which stands for tell him. First of all, if I'm trying to be very specific, if I'm stressing on either of these words, tell them, tell him, I'm not going to drop the TH or the H. But in most cases, tell is going to be stressed and the him or the them is going to get reduced. Tell him and tell him. So technically, this looks like it should be an tell him, and this looks like it should be an tell him. But I think we'd basically say them the same. Tell them. Because what we really are doing here is more like tell them, where there's a little schwa or reduced vowel there. Basically no vowel. Tell him about it. So I said I'd tell him about it. Can you tell him about it? I did tell him about it. I'm going to tell him about it. So not really any difference there. So yes, those do sound the same. Which means that you need context to know whether you're talking about a them or him in that case, which the context will give you. Okay, great question. Thank you. We have a question about the word bought. So in the word bought, letters OU say the ah vowel. You can think about it, for example, with a word like saw. I saw what you bought. So I would kind of rewrite it this way. I ought to have bought. Kind of visualizing it as that ah vowel, which basically is open like an ah, but a little bit rounded. Watch that you don't do more of an O. You don't want it to sound like boat. That's going to be more closed and sliding. O, boat. Ah, bought. You can get help for the ah sound in my videos for that here on the channel. And in our Sounds of English course, I'll walk you through those differences in those vowels and how to do that in bought. And then you also asked about the word processing. So in processing, my O is actually an ah vowel. And it has first syllable stress. So you're going to think about that like processing. I'm processing everything that you bought. Yeah, good words. Thank you for that request. Okay, we have a question about whether it's possible to speak in a standard British accent or general American accent by practicing at home. Yes, it does take a lot of practice, and it's helpful, I think, to have feedback about what's different in your speech. In Indian English dialects, there's some differences, more similar to British than American English, so you might have more success with that rather than the American dialect. But it is possible to practice. You just need to be able to understand what the patterns are that are different in your speech, isolate those patterns, make those speech sound changes. So it's a long process, but if you're interested in trying to do that for American English, you can use our courses. I do have a specific course for Indian English speakers, and for British English, there I'm sure are many materials for working on your British accent as well. Okay. We have a question about whether or not how sounding speaking more natural, speaking spontaneously compared to reading out loud. Yes, so reading out loud requires us to decode words and anticipate everything that's being said. So if I'm just talking, my brain will structure my sentence in my head. I'm thinking about what to say. I know what's important. So I naturally can be stressing on the important words and organizing them. When I'm reading a sentence, I'm reading something that someone else wrote. Your brain has to decode, understand the meaning, pronounce all the sounds, recognize all the words, and execute on that. And so you're likely to be less natural or fluent sounding because it's not your words, and the intonation patterns are more difficult to do while reading aloud. Another difference is that written language is always more complex, has more complex vocabulary, longer sentences. In speaking, we tend to use very short phrases and simple vocabulary. That's just natural for conversation and spoken speech versus written speech being more complicated. So that's pretty normal. And the way to practice is really to, when you're reading out loud, to practice it, read something silently in your head, think about the meaning, hear yourself saying it, and then read it out loud, and you'll be more likely to be able to use linking and reductions and natural phrases. It still may be sounding slightly less fluent because it's going to be denser and longer sentences that are less easy to say naturally. But you can get there. So good question, and thank you for bringing up that topic. Great. Okay. We have a question about photosynthesis. So for photosynthesis, we have secondary stress in the beginning. Photo, we use a flap T here. The T sounds more like a D, photo. We still have a clear O in the second syllable. And then we have main stress on syn, of synthesis. Letter Y says the I vowel, synthesis. So I would rewrite that like photo, photosynthesis. So minor stress here, photosynthesis. To practice, you can say it slow, one syllable at a time. Photosynthesis. Try to speed up. Or you can start on the stress syllable, synthesis, photosynthesis. That should help you recognize where those clear vowels are and sequence the sounds and syllables more easily. Thank you. Good word. Okay, we have a question about painted. Should I say the D at the end? So when a word ends with a T or a D, like paint or need, then as we add the ED, we do say the D sound at the end, and we add a full syllable. So painted sounds like painted, and needed sounds like needed. So most of the time you hear a did sound at the end, because we can't just add a T or D sound when we already have a T and D sound. We need to add that I sound as well. Painted, needed. Sometimes in NT, people will say just, they'll drop the T, so they might say it like painted. I painted yesterday. Painted. But we use a mix. Native speakers will also say painted. I painted yesterday. And I think that's clearer and easier. This is just similar to how sometimes we say internet instead of internet, but it's not necessary to do. Just recognize that you might hear some people saying I painted all weekend rather than I painted all weekend. Good question. Thank you. Okay. We have a question about the word theme. So the word theme, we have the voiceless TH sound, EME. This E makes this E say its name, so it's true E sound. We have the E. So I would rewrite that like theme. If the TH gives you trouble, just try to rest your tongue between your teeth and blow air. Theme. The theme for today. Very good. Okay. This writer says she has a hard time with the pronunciation of words ending with the letter R and following words starting with the letter L. For example, your life. It's hard to sound smooth. Okay, yeah, so probably just that R and L transition is where you're having difficulty. When I'm saying your or your life, I have to go from that pulled back tongue in the position to the lifted front tongue in the position. What I tend to notice is that the R position is more important. So if I try to get to my L position too quickly, my R is going to lose its tightness and sound more like your life instead of your life. The of life, I can actually make that L sound with my tongue lifting, the tip of my tongue lifting anywhere kind of near the front of my mouth. So if I'm just saying life by itself, it's going to be way up near the front by my teeth. If I'm saying your life, I'm probably making the L sound further back, a little behind my teeth and still lifting the tongue. So what I would say is just practice doing do it in words like early, earlier, places where girly, where you're kind of having to go from the R to the L. Also just try like low, lu, lie. Just work on getting from the to the L sound with another vowel, because when you go to the words initially, you may be stuck on old patterns. If you're just doing sounds lu or la, etc., you've never done that combination before, so you might be able to execute the R and the L more easily and then move back to working on combinations. And what I would say there is practice doing like mixed practice. So do a lot of everyday words. And I would start with like life, your life, laugh, your laugh, your lady, your list, your laundry, just trying to really go a lot of drill from to L, and then do it with other words with as well. Etc. So her laugh, her life, fur list, fur laundry, trying to just get a lot of movement back and forth between those two. Even though it's difficult, I think with a lot of repetition, if you can get that more slowly, then you want to just try speeding it back up so it stays fluent and natural as you're trying to use it in your everyday speech as well. That's definitely a challenge for a lot of people, so that's normal to have difficulties when R and L are in close proximity. Good question. Thank you for that. Okay. Thank you. Welcome to our channel member, Edison. You have a question about S at the ends of words nervous and ridiculous. So both of those words, the letter S says an S sound. So in nervous, I would just think about that like nervous, almost going right from my V to my S sound. Maybe a little bit of an I in there, nervous, but I'm just trying to kind of transition quickly because the stress is here on the ner syllable. And then in ridiculous, again, also kind of lis or lus, going almost quickly from the L, almost no vowel, to the S sound, lis, ridiculous. I think I use this rather than lus, ridiculous and nervous. Yeah, if that didn't address your question about the S at the end, let me know, but both of them do just say the voiceless S sound. Thank you for your support and being a channel member and for being here. It's nice to see you. Okay, I have a question about There's a question about watched it is. Watched it is. So we did talk about watched it already. We just would look at watched it is. I'm not sure how we would use this. I watched it. Is it good? Watched it is. So if I do it is, I tend to do it is. I link those. I flap that T. Watched it. So if I really was going to say this, I would probably do watched it is. Watched it is. Maybe watched it if. I would have watched it if. Did if. We still again have those two flap sounds. I would have watched it if it had been available. Okay, great. Thank you. When linking a word that ends with N with one that ends in G, like in gear, I tend to produce the NG sound. So yeah, if I'm saying I'm in gear, I'm not going to say in gear. The car is in gear, in gear, in gear. Yeah, we still need the N in the front and the G in the back. In good standing, in good standing. It would sound different if I kind of did in good standing, in good, in gear. It changes the vowel more than it changes the N and G sound, because an ing tends to have a higher, more nasal vowel because it's already getting ready for the ng sound. Versus in gear, I'm lifting my tongue and the back of my tongue is staying low until I get to the G of gear. So you can hear in gear, in gear. It doesn't sound that different, but this one, your vowel of in is going to be a little bit affected. So probably not the worst habit, not going to be noticeable to many people, but if you can do it without the ing, that's what I would suggest. Thanks for that comment and that question. Okay. Question about changing the accent of my internal monologue, the voice that I think with. So this is a good point. When we're hearing our own voice in our head, we can actually have kind of almost whatever accent we want. So thinking about as you're listening to accents that you like, native speakers or a voice that you like even, you can try to kind of hear that voice speaking in your head. How to do that. Sometimes maybe focusing on specific sounds, but I'd say this is an area where having the global sort of listening and your sort of fake accent in your mind is going to help you be able to switch over that. Also doing a contrast, like intentionally in your head, hear yourself heavily accented, exaggerate your accent, and then in your mind hear a perfect accent, but with your voice. It's really a challenge to the imagination, but I would say kind of going from models is going to be the most helpful. Listening to TV, movies, native speakers, kind of repeating what you hear in your head, in your own voice, but really trying to imitate the accent that you're going for. That's kind of a complicated question and a global answer, but hopefully you'll find that to be helpful. Thanks for that question. Okay, we have a question about the word monthly or month. So you're using bold voice and it's telling you your is sounding like an ah. So basically you're probably opening your mouth too much. So when you're saying month or monthly, you're probably doing a little bit more monthly. So that's probably because you're thinking ahead to the NTH or the THLY, that those are more difficult sounds for you. So in your mind, picture it like this. Also maybe use a word like much, or try like saying monthly mustard, monthly must, much, month, must, month. Kind of try to pair it with some other words, or even I like some months. Kind of in your mind thinking some mon, and keeping that mouth more closed, some months. For most of my clients that I work with, if they're saying like monthly payment, it's easier for them to just do the So if the word is not stressed, they don't tend to open up. But if they have to say some months, they won't always match here. They'll say some months. They'll open up too much on the stressed word because this word is longer. I'm holding it longer and my mouth wants to open more. And what you need to learn to be able to do is that both some and months have the exact same vowel. This one is just shorter in duration. This one is longer in duration. So practice just months, once a month, monthly, sums, putting that word month in different contexts where it's going to be faster and slower, but keeping it consistently more closed. And then if the TH gives you trouble, that may be why it's happening on that word and not other words with schwa. That would be my guess. So yeah, it's definitely a very common accent pattern for a lot of people. And also know that apps and voice recognition are not always perfect. It's probably that you're opening too much and you are doing a little too much of an ah sound, but do your best, and the app voice recognition is not going to be 100% all the time either. Great. Question about the difference between life and live. So in life, so this word can be live, like I live there, or live, like I'm doing a live video right now. The difference between life and live is that they both have the I sound, but this one is voiceless. Life is good, life is busy. Live, I want to have my voice on for the V sound. I'm live every Saturday. The vowel is going to be a little longer here and a little shorter here as well. So life and live. And then also we have live with the if vowel. Great question. Thank you. Okay, we'll take a couple more and then we need to wrap up for today. It's wonderful to see so many of you here, and it's great to have so many great questions. I'll try to get to at least one of everyone's question. I'm sorry if I don't get to everyone or if I don't get to your second and third questions, but we will be back again actually in a couple weeks on Saturday. I'll be missing a couple Saturdays for some travel, but you can check the channel and see. We'll start back up on February 15th. Okay, we have a question about apostle. Apostle. So the T is silent. We have the sound. Letter O says apa. And then we basically just do sul, like in missile or whistle, apostle. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so it's unusual. It doesn't really look like the spelling. Yeah, good question. Okay, and then a question for pioneer. So pioneer. We start with the I syllable. It's a clear vowel, secondary stress. The letter O says and then our main stress is on the near. Just like in engineer, pioneer. He was a pioneer of engineering. Great word, thank you. Okay, we have a question about at all. It's not easy at all. I didn't do it at all. It's not easy at all. What happens here is we link, the T becomes a flap. The first A of at, rather than being a full sound, might get a little bit reduced, so it sounds a little bit more like at all. So I would kind of think about it like this, and then we have the all is stressed. So it's not easy at all. You almost think about it as it. It's really going to be a reduced vowel rather than it's not easy at all, unless I'm stressing at all, which sometimes we do, right? It's not easy at all. Then I would pause and say each word clearly. If I'm just using it naturally and fluently, it's not easy at all, easy at all. So this vowel is going to get very reduced, kind of to an or an I sound. I hope that makes it easier rather than not easy at all. Great. Okay. Great. Wonderful. So I believe we covered all your questions. I apologize in advance if I missed a few. You can always leave follow-up questions in the comments after the video, or you can attend our next live class. Let me know what you're looking for, and I may already have resources on the channel here or on my website in our courses on speechmodification.com, and I can direct you to those. Thanks everyone for being part of class today and for the super chats. It was great to see that starting to happen a bit on the channel. I really appreciate your support. Those of you who've joined as channel members, those of you who have subscribed, and who keep coming back week after week with your great questions. It makes for a wonderful class, and I truly enjoy this time with you on Saturdays. So I look forward to seeing you in 3 weeks on February 15th for our next live class. Thanks so much for participating today, and remember to leave me comments and questions, likes, and shares. That helps support the channel as well, and I do respond to your comments and give you share resources here for you to answer your questions. Looking forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye everyone. Thank you for a great class.